Right, so yesterday I made a video about the rape problem in Sweden, for lack of a better way of putting it, and how 58% of the rapists are foreign born. And I seen this video today, and I didn't really want to make another video on Sweden, but I seen this, and I think I have to because this is becoming I mean, it already is not becoming, but it is a very big issue, and people still don't seem to get it. And a lot of the people that do get it, I would say the biggest problem when it comes to this kind of stuff is a lot of the people that do get it, that don't fall for the whole diversity propaganda, are afraid to speak out. Now, that's for obvious reasons of afraid of being called racist, but um, we need to start talking about this kind of stuff because Sweden is becoming a third world country, and I mean, a lot of people would argue that a lot of areas already do resemble a third world country, and we have problems like this in North America too. I mean, you have cities like Los Angeles, San Francisco, Baltimore, Detroit, Chicago. I mean, just to name a few that have large areas of them that crime is off the charts, basically resemble a third world country. And you have even left wing politicians that are talking about this. Namely, Bernie Sanders, I know in Baltimore, said that in 2016. And not that he would do anything to fix it, but we need to get this stuff figured out. And again, whenever you're talking about this kind of stuff, the first steps or first step to solving a problem is figuring out what's causing the problem in the first place. And the reason why we can't figure any of this kind of stuff out nowadays in this in the year 2019 is that we can't admit, or we can't admit publicly what the problems are. And for the simple reason that the left relies on not admitting what the problems are to get elected and to continue to get elected, and a large number of people are too afraid of being called mean names. So that's kind of why we can't do it. But basically, the story being two explosions in Stockholm tonight. One of the buildings was so damaged with the bomb, there was a risk of part of it collapsing. And the amount of bombings in Sweden, and people tossing grenades and having them go off, and rapes, murders, all this kind of stuff is absolutely off the charts in Sweden. And why? Someone might be wondering, well, why are you talking about Sweden so much? Well, Sweden is the country that arguably brought in the most quote unquote diversity over the last decade or so, and it's not doing very well. And the problem that we have when it comes to this scenario is, like I've mentioned before, and I'm gonna keep mentioning, is that whenever you're having a debate or a discussion when it comes to politics, one of the most key things to ask whoever it is on the other side, whether it's left or right, is to get them to ask before you even start it, or at the very early stages, is ask them, well, what would it take for you to change your mind? Or what would be evidence that would prove the prevailing point of view, whether it's on the left or the right, wrong? And the problem is that on the left, people don't do that. Like they won't do it. Like on the left, it'll be. I mean, well, one of the easy examples would be, well, what would be a reason to prove socialism wrong? Well, you'd look at an honest person would look and be like, well, other countries that have tried socialism, not had it work out. Well, I mean, you got Venezuela, you got a lot of communist countries, but you have countries like Denmark who socialists always insist, oh, this is an example of socialism working, even though you have their own prime minister. I don't know if it's president or prime minister, and very high ranking politicians saying, well, no, we're not socialist, stop calling us socialist. So if the best example you can use of socialism working is somewhere that insists they're not socialist, well, I think it's safe to say socialism doesn't work. Not only that, there's the obvious economic reasons and stuff, but on the right, for examples like this, you would ask them, well, what would be examples of, to prove that, the whole diversity is our strength works? Well, it would be, crime rates not going up, rape rates not going up, people integrating into society, because contrary to what, the leftist dogma, people who disagree with mass immigration don't care if immigrants want to come and contribute to society and integrate into society. And the problem is the left can't admit that, because they have this idea that the only reason you can disagree with them is because you're racist. That's the leftist opinion, and that's what the overwhelming majority of it, probably well in over 90%, would agree with. Like, I've never met someone on the left, and I mean, I'm sure they exist, but that that think that there's reasonable reasons that you could disagree with mass immigration. The only ones that I have heard of some, but they're more center left people. I haven't heard of someone who's a strong Justin Trudeau or like a Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren, open borders are great type that admits that there's rational, realistic reasons to disagree with mass immigration. Like, I haven't heard of one. And I've heard of many people on the right. In fact, I would say the majority of people on the right, namely, Justin Trudeau and, contrary to popular belief, Donald Trump, who want immigrants that are going to come. Not Justin Trudeau, Andrew Scheer, I meant, who isn't really on the right, but let's just assume he is for sake of argument. Andrew Scheer didn't want to reduce immigration levels, and they're already much higher than the average country. Almost every conservative politician in Canada didn't want to disagree. I mean, Maxime Bernier is one of the few. I'm sure a lot of them maybe privately, if it was legitimately up to them, but it's not an important enough issue for them. But basically, the whole point being is that that's where the big divide is. Like, that's why I mention all the time about people in the middle, or people who are apolitical, always have this idea that, all people on the left and the right, they're all the same. They're all, partisans. Well, that's not really true. Now, are they all partisans? Yeah, but if you're partisan and you have legitimate reasons to back up your claims, then that's a completely different story. So, basically, the point being that I would stress in this video is to ask people on the left legitimately, what would it take for you to change your mind on the whole diversity is great, diversity is our strength dogma? Like, what would it take to get you to change your mind? And if stuff like this isn't, then I don't even know if a civil war would. Like, I don't, because the rape rates are off the charts, the crime is off the charts. In Canada, I know the housing costs are going up because of it, and the housing costs weren't cheap before. It's not like they were dirt cheap before, unless you're in some. I mean, there is an example really, but. And people are wondering, well, why? Well, bringing in, mass immigration means that the demand of housing is going to be much higher than the supply, because, well, construction companies and, even government-funded housing wasn't planned out right. And that's the problem with the left too, is that they never plan out anything economically. They don't even understand basic supply and demand economics, which is like the thing you learn in like the first week of an economics class, which I know because I've taken more than one of them. It's basic demand and supply, is that if the demand is going to go way up and the supply doesn't, well, then the cost is going to go way up, because the demand is so high and the supply hasn't came up to match it. And that's what we have in Canada. We have, the demand for housing has gone way up because of mass immigration, but the supply hasn't came up. So the cost is going through the roof, specifically in places like Vancouver, Toronto, Montreal, all these kind of, even in the other major cities, but namely the biggest ones. And you have all these people that I cannot stand, that you see them all, like, go read through, conservative politicians, or even people like Justin Trudeau's like Twitter threads and comments on, some of these popular YouTube videos, and they'll complain about problems that they're specifically contributing to. It's like the, you have these people that are on the left. They support all these policies, but they're not smart enough to put two and two together. Or some of them are, but they don't want to admit to themselves that they were wrong for so long. And the problem is that their solution's more of the same. And all this, housing costs are gone, through the roof. So the solution is, well, let's get the government more involved. Let's get more government this, more government that. And they're not smart enough to recognize that the government was the cause of the problem in the first place. And the reason why these kind of people, they don't want to change their mind is because changing their mind is very scary, because changing their mind means that, oh, maybe some immigrants are going to have to go back. And the problem is that they're going to have to, I mean, maybe not they're going to have to go back, but there's going to have to be separate areas one way or the other. Because as much, like I say, my position on this is, it would be amazing to be able to bring everyone from the third world into the first world. It would be amazing. I would love to be able to do that. The problem is we can't. It's not realistic. And for the simple reason that we can't afford it. We can't even afford, as Canadians, the lifestyle that we're currently going at. I mean, we couldn't afford the lifestyle we were going at just 5-10 years ago. So bringing in massive amounts of people who are net drains on society, like I said, I've made videos about it before. I'm going to keep making videos about it. There's no arguing that. Immigrants from the third world are net drains on society. That doesn't mean you judge individuals, just as groups. And again, judging groups differently when they act differently is not prejudice. That's the very definition of insanity, because if you can't judge groups of people differently who act differently, then you have to treat everybody exactly the same no matter what differences could possibly arise, which is insane. Now, judging groups of people differently when they act similarly, well, yes, that is prejudice. Judging an individual based off group averages when you don't know that they fall into those averages, well, yes, that would be prejudice as well. So, like I have to mention in every video, yes, I understand that part of it, but basically the take-home point being here is that for most people that watch this video, I'm probably just preaching to the choir. But for people who are undecided on the issue of mass immigration, of diversity as our strength, and for people who agree with it, the question I would ask is, what would it take for you to change your mind? And like I basically answered the question. There's nothing. Nothing's going to make them change their mind, because they're addicted to getting something for nothing. And big government, it follows hook, line, and sinker. You either have to agree with pretty much all of it, or you have to agree with none of it. And if you want socialism, if you want big government, if you want the government to control as much of your life and the economy as possible, then you have to agree with this stuff. And that's kind of the unwritten rule on the left, is that you're either with us or you're against us. And if you're on the left and you're with us, they'll defend you tooth and nail. Like, Justin Trudeau can wear blackface and people act like it's not even an issue. Don Cherry can vaguely make an assumption about groups of people that he's more than likely right about, and he's fired. If a right-wing politician wore like if Andrew Scheer wore blackface, and he would have stepped down the next day or even the day of. And I challenge one person on the left to challenge me on that, because we all know, like, let's just be honest. Like I've mentioned before in videos, is that one of the big reasons for the political divide, and people talk about, well, what's causing this big political divide nowadays, and it's that one side isn't honest about their intentions. Now, the right deceives people a little bit too, but the left is deceitful about the whole premise behind most of their things. Like, at least the right is honest. The problem is that one of the big problems with political divides is that you have people that don't understand other sides. They tend to just project, and that's what you get with the left, is that they're so crazy and they have such nefarious intentions that to get power they need to use that craziness and nefarious intentions to get elected. So because they don't understand the right, and the right understands the left, which is why the right doesn't go after the left nearly as much as the left goes after the right. And you even have, the people that run CNN admitting that. You have there's no such thing as Antifa on the right, as much as the left would have you think that the two skinheads out there, the two far right guys out there, are indicative of the tens of thousands of Antifa members out there, even in Canada alone, probably, and let alone the U.S. But the political divide is that the left doesn't understand the right. The left assumes nefarious, because the left doesn't understand the right, and the right understands the left. So the right is much more innocent. And like I say, I don't even agree with the right on most issues. So people saying, "Oh, you're just biased to the right." Well, I don't even agree with them on most issues. I didn't vote Scheer because the NDP were so bad. That was just enough to get me to vote against the NDP in the Alberta election. So I'm so reluctant to vote. Like I don't think I'll ever vote Conservative federally again. More than likely provincially, just because the NDP are so bad. And I think the more local a Conservative gets, the better they are. But that's more of a that's going off in a bit of a tangent. But anyways, getting back to the whole political divide, the reason for this big political divide is that we can't be honest about things. The left isn't honest about their intentions, and because they project their beliefs onto everyone, they assume wrongfully that for the right to get elected and for the right to have power, it's because they have nefarious intention, because they do. And like I said, the studies done by people like Jonathan Haidt show that the left can't predict the right's beliefs, which is why anybody who takes the left, throwing out racism and all this crap seriously, is like, I don't have words for you. You're so wrong. But the right can predict, the left can't. Basically, to sum it up, and the reason is that the left isn't honest. That they always claim, like I said before, they claim to care about the poor. They only claim to care about the poor so they can get their votes, to get their agenda rammed through. They claim that diversity is our strength, even though they only care about it when it benefits them. They, like I said, I can go on and on about these issues, but they claim to care about gun violence and all this crap, even though gun violence causes gun violence is the aftermath mainly of their diversity is our strength BS. And the fact that their solutions to it is always, let's just ban guns. Let's not, look at it from a realistic point of view. But basically, I just noticed how long I've been talking, so I'm going to leave it there in this video. But basically, like I said, the take-home point being is that I don't know what it's going to take for people that agree with this whole diversity is our strength dogma to admit they're wrong. And like I say, to answer that question is I don't think there's anything, which is why if you are the least bit skeptical about it, you need to make your voice heard, because there isn't enough people making their voice heard that disagree with it, and it's getting people killed. It's causing a lot of tensions in society, and it's only going to get worse. Like, it's not going to, like, if you think about your personal life, whenever a problem in your life arises, not talking about it doesn't make it better, and not addressing it doesn't make it better. It only gets worse. And we have these lefty governments that their solution to it is just not addressing it and pretending it doesn't exist. But whenever you do that, the problem just gets worse. So that's about all as far as this video goes. If you like to, make sure to hit that like and subscribe, and stay tuned for more.